The afternoon sun filtered through the high windows of the sporting goods superstore, casting long shadows across aisles stocked with camping gear, fishing rods, and hunting equipment. Captain Sarah Chun moved through the firearms section with the unhurried gait of someone comfortable in her own skin, her 8-year-old daughter, Maya, trailing behind. Fascinated by a display of compound bows, Sarah wore civilian clothes, faded jeans, a gray hoodie, hiking boots, but certain details betrayed a different story. Her posture remained perfectly aligned even when she bent to examine a scope on the lower shelf. Her eyes tracked the exits, the security cameras, the flow of customers with the casual precision of someone who'd spent years calculating angles and distances. When Maya wandered toward the archery section, Sarah adjusted her position to maintain visual contact without appearing to hover. "Mom, can we look at the crossbows?" Maya asked, her voice carrying that particular brand of excitement only children possess when surrounded by potential adventure. "Sure, sweetheart. Stay where I can see you." Sarah returned her attention to the rifle maintenance kits, comparing brands with methodical focus. Her hands calloused, strong, with faint scars across the knuckles, moved with practiced efficiency as she selected cleaning solvents and bore brushes. To anyone watching, she was just another customer, perhaps a hunter preparing for deer season. They wouldn't notice how she positioned herself at angles that kept both her daughter and the store entrance in her peripheral vision. They wouldn't recognize the slight adjustment of weight distribution that kept her balanced. The sporting goods section attracted a particular demographic on Saturday afternoons. Families preparing for camping trips, hunters stalking up before heading to the range, military personnel from the nearby base picking up personal gear. Sarah had chosen this store specifically because it catered to serious outdoorsmen, people who understood equipment and respected firearms. The staff here knew their inventory, and customers generally maintained a baseline of competence and courtesy. She was examining a premium rifle cleaning kit when Maya appeared at her elbow, tugging her sleeve. "Mom, there's a really cool Barrett rifle in the display case. Can we look at it?" Sarah smiled, tucking a strand of her daughter's dark hair behind her ear. "You've been paying attention to my old photos, haven't you? The Barrett M82 is so cool," Maya said with 8-year-old enthusiasm. "You said it could shoot really, really far." "It can. Come on, let's go look." They moved to the far end of the firearms counter where the premium rifles sat in a locked glass case. The Barrett .50 caliber sat prominently displayed, all 30 pounds of precision engineering and devastating capability. Sarah studied it with the particular focus of someone who understood intimately what the weapon could do. She'd carried one for 3 years during her service, logged thousands of rounds, made shots that would sound like fiction to civilians. Maya pressed her nose against the glass. "It's bigger than in the pictures." "It's a serious piece of equipment," Sarah said quietly. "Not a toy, not a trophy. A tool for a very specific job." Behind the counter, a young employee noticed their interest and approached. He was mid-20s, sporting a veteran's cap and the confident bearing of someone who'd seen combat. His name tag read Marcus, Army Ranger. "Interested in the Barrett?" he asked, his tone professional but friendly. Then his eyes landed on Sarah's face and something shifted in his expression. Recognition, perhaps, or assessment. "Just showing my daughter," Sarah replied. "She's been asking about it." Marcus nodded slowly, his gaze dropping to Sarah's hands, the way she stood, the calculated distance she maintained from the counter. "You familiar with the platform?" "I've used one," Sarah said simply, not elaborating. The employee's expression changed subtly, respect replacing casual courtesy. He didn't press for details. That kind of restraint spoke to his own training. Real operators didn't need to ask questions, didn't need to prove anything. The quiet ones who simply said, "I've used one," were often the most dangerous. "It's a beautiful weapon," Marcus said. "We've got a Barrett-certified armorer on staff if you ever need maintenance work." "Good to know." Sarah was about to guide Maya toward the checkout when 3 men entered the firearms section with the kind of loud confidence that immediately disrupted the store's atmosphere. They were in their late 20s, wearing tactical gear that looked expensive but unused pristine plate carriers over clean t-shirts. Brand new combat boots without a scuff mark, ball caps with Punisher logos and aggressive slogans. Their voices carried across the aisles, brash and attention-seeking. Sarah's awareness sharpened automatically, her mind cataloging details. 3 males, athletic builds, moving with the swagger of people who'd never been seriously challenged. The leader was 6'2", 200 pounds with a neatly trimmed beard and sunglasses pushed up on his head despite being indoors. His companions flanked him like acolytes, laughing too loud at his jokes, playing to his ego. They moved toward the Barrett display with proprietary confidence, and Sarah instinctively guided Maya a few steps away, creating distance. But the store's layout offered limited options. They were in a corner section, and the path to the main aisle meant passing directly by the approaching group. "Maya, stay close," Sarah said quietly, her tone unchanged but carrying an undertone. That made her daughter immediately move closer. The lead man stopped at the display case, his voice booming. "Now that's what I'm talking about. The Barrett 50 cal. The king of long-range dominance." His friends echoed agreement, one of them pulling out his phone to take photos. Marcus, the employee, maintained his professional demeanor, but Sarah noticed the slight tightening around his eyes. He'd dealt with this type before. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Marcus asked. "Yeah, let me see that, Barrett," the leader demanded more than requested. "I've been thinking about adding one to my collection." Sarah began steering Maya toward the aisle, moving with deliberate casualness. "Don't attract attention. Don't engage. Get to the checkout. Complete the transaction. Leave. Basic situational awareness protocol. Avoid confrontation whenever possible." They almost made it. Maya, distracted by watching the loud men, didn't notice the end cap display of hunting knives. Her shoulder caught the edge, and the entire rack tipped, sending half a dozen box knives clattering to the floor. The noise cut through the store's ambient. "Sound like a gunshot. Jesus Christ!" The bearded man snapped, spinning toward them. "Watch where you're going!" Sarah immediately moved between her daughter and the strangers, one hand gently touching Maya's shoulder while her body language remained deliberately non-threatening. "I'm sorry, she didn't see it. We'll pick them up." She was already kneeling, quickly but carefully restacking the boxes, keeping Maya behind her, maintaining awareness of the 3 men now focused entirely on them. The other customers in the section had gone quiet, that particular tension that appears when a situation might escalate. "Sorry, doesn't cut it," the bearded man said, taking a step closer. "Teach your kid to pay attention. People get hurt when you're not aware of your surroundings." The irony wasn't lost on Sarah, but she kept her expression neutral. "You're absolutely right. Maya, apologize to these gentlemen." "I'm sorry," Maya said in a small voice. Partly hidden behind her mother. Sarah finished restacking the display and stood, keeping her movements slow and controlled. "We're all set. Sorry again for the disruption." She placed a hand on Maya's shoulder to guide her away, but the bearded man shifted his position, not quite blocking their path but making it clear he wasn't finished. "Hold up," he said, his tone carrying that dangerous edge of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "You just gonna walk away?" "No, thank you for being understanding. No real apology." Sarah felt the familiar sensation of time beginning to slow, her training automatically assessing and cataloging. 3 potential hostiles positioned in a loose triangle. Leader exhibiting classic dominance behavior, chest out, chin up, invading. Personal space. Companions watching for his reaction, pack mentality. Approximately 15 other customers in visual range, most backing away. 2 security cameras covering this section. Marcus behind the counter, hand moving subtly toward something under the register, probably a panic button. Nearest exit 40 feet away, clear path currently blocked. "I apologize if my daughter's accident upset you," Sarah said, her voice calm and measured. "We're going to go now." "I don't think I like your tone," the man said, taking another step forward. He was now less than 3 feet away, well inside Sarah's personal space, his body language clearly intended to intimidate. "You think you can just dismiss me? Do you know who I am?" "I don't, and it doesn't matter," Sarah replied quietly. "Please step aside." One of the companions laughed, a harsh bark of sound. "Dude, she's got an attitude. Maybe you should teach her some manners." Sarah's pulse remained steady 62 beats per minute, exactly where it always settled before an operation. Her breathing stayed controlled, deep and even. She could feel Maya trembling slightly against her leg, and that sensation her daughter's fear activated a different level of focus. "I'm asking you politely to let us pass," Sarah said, her voice dropping half an octave. Still calm but now carrying an edge that anyone with combat experience would recognize. "Please don't make this a problem." The bearded man smirked, reading her calmness as submission. "Or what? You gonna call for the manager? Get me kicked out?" He glanced at his friends, playing to his audience. "Maybe if you ask nicely, really." "Nicely, I'll consider it." Marcus called from behind the counter, his voice firm. "Sir, you need to back off and let them through." "Mind your business, kid." The bearded man shot back without looking away from Sarah. "The lady and I are just having a conversation." Sarah felt the weight of the maintenance kit in her left hand, approximately 3 pounds, solid plastic. Case could be used as an improvised striking weapon if necessary. Her right hand remained free, hanging relaxed at her side, but positioned where it could move instantly to defend or deflect. Maya was tucked safely behind her, protected by Sarah's body positioning. The math was simple. 3 men, each outweighing her by 50 to 80 pounds. She was 5'7", 145 pounds, 42 years old. By conventional metrics, she was completely outmatched. By operational metrics, she'd already won. Last chance. Sarah said quietly, "Step aside." The bearded man's expression darkened. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by a woman half his size in front of witnesses. His ego demanded a response, required him to escalate, to establish dominance. Or what? He repeated, reaching out towards Sarah's shoulder, not quite touching but the intent clear. Intimidation through implied physical contact. "You gonna make me?" Several things happened in the next 2 seconds. Marcus hit the panic button. The store's security frequency crackled to life, alerting management and the on-site security team. Several customers pulled out phones, either to film or call 911. One older man in a veteran's cap started moving closer, positioning himself to intervene, and Sarah made her final calculation. She could continue de-escalating, hope that security arrived before the situation turned physical. She could try to push past, potentially triggering a grabbing response that would escalate to actual violence. She could submit, accept the intimidation, teach her daughter that sometimes you just have to take disrespect to avoid confrontation. Or she could set a boundary. "You're going to touch me," Sarah said, her voice perfectly calm. And then, "I'm going to respond. What happens after that is your choice, but I'm giving you one last opportunity to make a different decision." The bearded man laughed, but there was an edge of uncertainty in it now. Something in Sarah's tone, in the absolute stillness of her posture, was triggering instinctive warning signals his ego was too inflated to heed. "Babe, I think," one of his friends started to say, picking up on the same signals. "Shut up," the leader snapped. Then to Sarah, with deliberate malice, "I think you need to learn some respect." His hand came up, open-palmed, moving towards Sarah's shoulder in a pushing motion. Not a punch, not technically an assault, but a clear physical escalation. A statement. A claim of dominance. His fingers never made contact. Sarah moved. It wasn't fast implied rush, loss of control. This was different, efficient, economical, the kind of movement that comes from 10,000 hours of training. From muscle memory so deep it operates below conscious thought. Her weight shifted slightly onto her back foot, creating a 45-degree angle that turned her shoulder out of the path of his hand. Simultaneously, her right hand rose in a tight arc, forearm intercepting his extending wrist and redirecting the momentum laterally. The motion looked almost gentle, like she was guiding rather than blocking. The bearded man stumbled slightly, his balance disrupted by the unexpected redirection. Before he could recover, Sarah's left hand set down the maintenance kit and her stance widened into something unmistakable to anyone with combat training. Weight distributed perfectly. Knees slightly bent, center of gravity low and stable. "Don't," she said quietly. But ego and momentum are powerful forces. The man's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. His friends were watching. Customers had their phones out. He'd been publicly checked by a woman in front of an audience. He swung, a proper punch. This time, right cross aimed at Sarah's face, his shoulder rotating into it, his weight committed. The kind of punch that could break a nose, fracture an orbital bone, cause serious damage. Sarah's head moved 3 inches to the left. The fist passed through empty air where her face had been a split second earlier. Before the man could retract his arm, Sarah's right hand locked onto his extended wrist, her left hand moving to his elbow, and she executed a textbook joint. Manipulation that any Krav Maga or military combatives instructor would recognize instantly. She didn't muscle him. She didn't use strength. She used leverage, body mechanics, and the man's own committed momentum against him. His arms straightened, his body twisted to accommodate the joint lock, and suddenly he was off balance, bent forward, his face level with Sarah's hip, completely controlled. The entire sequence took less than 2 seconds. The store had gone silent, except for the sound of shocked gasps and the electronic chime of someone's dropped phone hitting the floor. Sarah held the lock for exactly 1 heartbeat, long enough to establish complete control, short enough to avoid causing injury, then released and stepped back, creating distance. The bearded man stumbled away, clutching his wrist. His expression transformed from aggression to shocked disbelief. His 2 friends stood frozen, their earlier bravado evaporating like morning fog. One of them had his mouth literally hanging open. "Don't try that again," Sarah said calmly, positioning herself once more between the men and Maya. "Walk away, now." But the bearded man, despite having just been comprehensively dismantled, couldn't let it go. Years of unchecked ego, of never facing real consequences, wouldn't allow him to simply leave. He had to save face. "You bitch," he snarled, his voice shaking with humiliation and rage. "You're gonna regret that." He reached for his waistband, and the entire atmosphere of the store changed instantly. Multiple people screamed. Marcus vaulted over the counter, no longer just an employee but a trained soldier responding to a potential weapons threat. The older veteran in the cap was already moving, phone to his ear. Sarah's response was immediate and precisely calibrated. She closed the distance in 2 steps, not rushing but covering ground with frightening efficiency. Her left hand intercepted his reaching hand, trapping it against his body. Her right hand came up in a palm strike that stopped precisely 1 inch from his throat, held there, demonstrating capability without executing. "No weapon," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "No reach. No stupid decisions. You're done." She could feel it. The way his body had tensed, the way his breathing had accelerated, the tremor in his muscles. He was crashing hard off his adrenaline, his fight-or-flight response warring with the cognitive realization that he was completely, utterly outmatched. Sarah maintained the control position for 3 seconds, then released and stepped back again, her hands dropping to her sides, non-threatening but ready. The bearded man sagged, all the aggressive posturing drained out of him. His friends had already backed away, hands raised, clearly wanting no part of whatever this had become. Marcus was at Sarah's shoulder now, and she could see in her peripheral vision that he'd moved with professional precision, maintaining distance but ready to intervene. The older veteran had positioned himself between the scene and the other customers, directing people away from potential danger. "Security's coming," Marcus said quietly to Sarah. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she replied, then glanced back at Maya, who stood wide-eyed but unharmed, protected behind a display rack. "Baby, you okay?" Maya nodded mutely. Sarah turned her attention back to the 3 men, her gaze moving across each of them with the kind of assessment that made them instinctively step back. "Here's what happens now," she said, her voice carrying to the gathered crowd. "Security arrives, they review the camera footage, and they see that I was assaulted and defended myself with appropriate and measured force. They see that I attempted to de-escalate multiple times, that I was protecting my child, and that I used the minimum necessary response. Anyone here who wants to dispute that?" Silence. Then multiple voices from the watching customers. "She tried to walk away. That guy was totally out of line," she defended herself. "That's all, I got it all on video." The bearded man seemed to fold in on himself, the full weight of his mistake crashing down. He'd assaulted someone in a public place in front of dozens of witnesses with security cameras rolling. And he'd been dismantled so quickly and efficiently that it was clear he'd picked a fight far above his weight class. But it was what happened next that transformed the moment from a simple confrontation into something that would be discussed at the store for months. The older veteran, tall, weathered, probably in his 60s, stepped forward, his eyes locked on Sarah with an expression of dawning recognition. He wore a faded Navy cap with insignia that identified him as a former SEAL team commander. When he spoke, his voice carried The absolute authority of someone who'd spent decades in special operations. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I'm Commander Richard Hayes, retired. Navy Special Warfare." He paused, his eyes moving from Sarah's stance to her hands to the way she held herself. "I know that skill set. I know those movements. And I'm guessing you know the Barrett in that case better than anyone in this store." Sarah met his gaze steadily, recognizing in his eyes the same calculation she'd been trained to make: identifying operators, sorting threats, reading capability. "Sarah Chun," she said quietly. "Captain, retired, Naval Special Warfare Development Group." The designation hung in the air like a detonation. DevGru, Development Group, the unit that doesn't officially exist, that trains the most elite operators in the American military, that handles missions no one ever hears about. SEAL, Team 6. Commander Hayes' expression transformed from respect to something approaching awe. "The Sarah Chun?" He glanced at the Barrett in the display case, then back to her. "You're the one they call Ghost. 3,000 meters. Kandahar Province, 2019. Longest confirmed kill in naval special warfare history." The store had gone silent again, but this time the quality of the silence was different. This wasn't shock or fear. This was reverence. Marcus, behind the counter, made a soft sound of recognition. "Holy shit," he breathed. "You're that Chun? The one they talk about in sniper school?" Sarah felt the weight of attention shift. Felt the narrative transformed from woman defending herself to legend standing in sporting goods aisle. She didn't seek this kind of recognition, had spent her retirement specifically avoiding it, but there was no walking it back now. The bearded man, still clutching his wrist, had gone completely pale. The realization of what he'd done swinging at a decorated special operations officer, one of the deadliest trained operatives in the American military, was written plainly across his face. "I didn't," he started, his voice hoarse. "I didn't know. It shouldn't matter." Sarah cut him off, her tone firm but not cruel. "You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them with respect. You shouldn't need to be afraid of consequences to make good decisions. That's the whole point." Store security arrived then, 2 uniformed officers moving through the crowd, followed 30 seconds later by the store manager, and surprisingly, 2 military police officers who'd apparently been shopping nearby and heard the commotion on their radios. One of the MPs, a female captain, took in the scene with practiced efficiency. Sarah's calm demeanor, the 3 deflated men, the crowd of supportive witnesses, Commander Hayes standing at attention despite being in civilian clothes. "What's the situation?" the MP captain asked, her question directed at Sarah more than the store security. "These 3 men initiated a confrontation with me and my daughter," Sarah explained calmly. "I attempted to de-escalate verbally. When one of them became physical, I defended myself using appropriate and measured force. No one is seriously injured. The entire incident was recorded by store cameras and multiple witnesses." The MP captain's eyes narrowed slightly, her professional assessment calculating details. She noticed Commander Hayes' stance, the way Marcus stood at respectful attention, the quality of Sarah's bearing. "Ma'am, can I see your ID?" Sarah pulled out her wallet and handed over her military ID. The MP captain's expression shifted as she read it, her eyes widening slightly. "Captain Chen," she said, her tone transforming to something closer to formal respect. "I'm Captain Rodriguez, Provost Marshal's office. Do you wish to press charges?" Sarah looked at the 3 men, the bearded leader still pale and shaken, his friends looking like they wanted to disappear into the floor, and felt the weight of the decision settle on her shoulders. She could press charges. Assault, battery, threatening a minor, creating a public disturbance. The video evidence was ironclad. She'd have the full support of dozens of witnesses, military police, probably the local prosecutor's office once they learned her background. These men would face consequences that could alter their lives' criminal records. Potential jail time, social media infamy from the videos already being uploaded. Justice served clean and cold, or she could choose a different path. "Rodriguez," Sarah said carefully, "I appreciate your response and professionalism. However, I don't wish to press charges at this time." The MP captain blinked, clearly surprised. "Ma'am, you're certain? These individuals committed assault on a decorated military officer and created a dangerous situation involving a minor." "I'm certain," Sarah confirmed, "on one condition." She turned to face the 3 men directly, and all of them flinched slightly under her gaze. You're going to learn from this, she said, her voice quiet but carrying absolute authority. Not because you got caught, not because you're embarrassed, but because today you discovered that you have no idea what other people are capable of. You made assumptions. You decided that because someone wasn't loud, wasn't aggressive, wasn't posturing, that they were weak. You confused silence with submission. You mistook courtesy for cowardice. The bearded man nodded miserably, still unable to meet her eyes. You're going to leave this store, Sarah continued. You're going to think very carefully about what happened here. And you're going to remember that every person you meet carries their own story, their own capabilities, their own strength. The next time you feel like intimidating someone in a store, in traffic, online, anywhere, you're going to remember this moment. You're going to remember that the most dangerous people in the world don't need to prove anything to anyone. She paused, letting the words sink in. Respect isn't something you extract through fear. It's something you earn through character. You three have a lot of work to do on that front. Don't waste this lesson. Commander Hayes made a sound that might have been approval. Captain Rodriguez was watching Sarah with undisguised respect. Marcus, behind the counter, nodded slowly. The bearded man finally found his voice. I'm sorry, he said, and for the first time he sounded genuinely contrite. I'm really sorry. To you, to your daughter, I was completely out of line. Yes, you were, Sarah agreed. Now leave and do better. The three men didn't need to be told twice. They moved toward the exit with none of their earlier swagger, shoulders hunched, the weight of humiliation and recognition hanging on them like physical burdens. The other customers parted to let them through. Silence following their departure. Once they were gone, the store seemed to collectively exhale. Captain Rodriguez stepped closer to Sarah, lowering her voice. That was remarkably generous, Captain. Chun, most people would have prosecuted. Most people haven't spent a decade learning that violence should always be the last option, Sarah replied. I handled the immediate threat. They learned a lesson they needed to learn. Pressing charges would just be revenge, and I'm not interested in that. The MP captain nodded slowly, then extended her hand. It was an honor, ma'am. Thank you for your service. They shook, the formal acknowledgement of one warrior to another. Captain Rodriguez signaled to her partner, and the military police departed to file their report. Store security took statements from several witnesses, confirmed the camera footage showed exactly what Sarah had described, and thanked her for her restraint and professionalism. The manager, clearly shaken but impressed, offered a discount on her purchase and an apology for the incident. This is supposed to be a safe environment for families, he said earnestly. I'm sorry you and your daughter experienced that. Not your fault, Sarah assured him. You handled it well. As the crowd dispersed and the store slowly returned to its normal rhythm, Commander Hayes approached again, his expression contemplative. Captain Chun, he said, I hope you don't mind. But that recognition, your record, your service, it's something the community should know about. Not for glory, but because young operators need role models. They need to see what real professionalism looks like. Sarah smiled slightly. Commander, with respect, I did my job. Same as thousands of others who served and never got recognition. The shot that made the record books? That was one trigger pull out of a career's worth of missions. It doesn't define me. No, Hayes agreed, but how you handled yourself today does. The restraint, the measured response, the choice. To teach rather than punish. That's what defines an operator. That's what we try to train into people, and most never fully internalize it. You lived it. Sarah glanced at Maya, who'd been quietly watching the entire interaction, processing lessons about strength and control that would shape her understanding of both. I had a good reason to stay controlled, Sarah said softly. She was watching. Hayes followed her gaze and nodded with understanding. The best reason there is. He offered a formal salute unusual in civilian clothes, but the gesture carried weight that transcended regulations. Sarah returned it with equal formality. Two warriors, different generations, sharing a moment of mutual respect. When Hayes departed, Marcus finally came around from behind the counter, his expression somewhere between starstruck and embarrassed. Captain Chun, he said hesitantly, I should have stepped in sooner. I should have… You did exactly right, Sarah interrupted. You called security, you positioned yourself to intervene if needed, and you recognized when the situation was controlled. That's good tactical thinking. What unit were you with? 2nd Ranger Battalion, Marcus replied, standing a little straighter. 2 deployments, Iraq and Afghanistan. Good unit, you carry yourself well. She extended her hand. Thank you for having my back. They shook, and Sarah could see the younger veteran practically glowing with pride. She remembered being that age, still processing her service, still figuring out how to be a warrior in a civilian world. Finally, Sarah turned to Maya, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet through the aftermath. She knelt down to her daughters, eye level, hands resting gently on the girl's shoulders. You okay, baby? Maya nodded, but her eyes were troubled. Mom, why didn't you get mad? Those men were really mean. They tried to hurt you. I know they did. But you didn't yell, you didn't get angry, you just stopped them. Maya's brow furrowed with 8-year-old confusion. Aren't you supposed to get mad when people are mean? Sarah took a slow breath, choosing her words carefully. This was the lesson she'd hoped to teach someday, though she'd never imagined the circumstances would be quite so dramatic. Maya, anger is easy, she said quietly. Getting mad, yelling, fighting, those are the simplest responses. But they're not the strongest responses. I don't understand. Real strength, Sarah continued, isn't about being loud or aggressive. It's about control. It's about staying calm when everything around you is chaos. Those men wanted to make me angry because anger makes you sloppy, makes you make mistakes. When you stay calm, when you stay in control, you win before the fight even starts. Maya considered this, her young mind working through concepts that most adults never fully grasped. So being quiet is stronger than being loud? Sometimes, not always, but often. Sarah smiled gently. Your grandmother used to tell me something when I was your age. She'd say, empty vessels make the most noise. The people who need to prove how tough they are usually aren't. The ones who are actually dangerous? They don't need to prove anything. Like you. Like anyone who's learned discipline. That's what the military taught me, not just how to fight, but when not to fight. Anyone can throw a punch. It takes real strength to walk away. It takes even more strength to defend yourself only as much as necessary and no more. Maya was quiet for a moment, then asked in a small voice, Were you scared? Sarah pulled her daughter into a hug, holding her close. No, baby. I wasn't scared because I knew exactly what I was capable of, and I knew how it would end. But I need you to understand something important. Just because I wasn't scared doesn't mean I wanted that to happen. I would have walked away if they'd let me. Violence is always the last choice, never the first. Because you're strong enough not to need it? Exactly. Sarah pulled back, looking into her daughter's eyes. Remember this, Maya. The strongest people in the world are the ones who can protect themselves and others without losing control. Without letting ego or anger make their decisions. That's real power. That's real strength. Maya nodded slowly, and Sarah could see the understanding taking root. This would be a foundational memory, a moment that shaped how her daughter understood strength and courage and control. They completed their purchase, the rifle cleaning kit and some additional supplies, and walked toward the exit. Marcus waved from behind the counter, respectful and grateful. Several customers nodded acknowledgement as they passed, recognition and respect in their expressions as they reached the doors. Sarah felt someone approaching from behind, not threatening, but purposeful. She turned to find an older woman, probably in her 70s, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Excuse me, the woman said softly. I just wanted to thank you. My granddaughter was here with me today, and she saw what happened. She's 13, trying to figure out what it means to be strong, to stand up for herself. What you did today, how you handled those men, that's going to stay with her. That's going to teach her something important about real strength. Sarah felt unexpected emotion tighten her throat. This was why she'd served, why she'd spent years in hard places doing hard things. Not for medals or recognition, but for moments like this. For the chance to make the world slightly safer, slightly better. For the next generation. Thank you for telling me that, Sarah said. That means more than you know. The woman squeezed Sarah's hand briefly, then returned to her granddaughter, who was watching Sarah with wide-eyed admiration. Sarah and Maya walked out into the parking lot, into afternoon sunshine that felt somehow brighter than it had when they'd entered. Maya reached up and took her mother's hand, and they walked together toward their car. Mom? Maya said as Sarah unlocked the doors. Yeah, sweetheart? When I grow up, I want to be strong like you. Not just fighting strong quiet. Strong. Sarah stopped, knelt down one more time, and looked into her daughter's eyes that reflected back determination and understanding and the beginning of real wisdom. You already are. Baby, she said softly. You already are. They climbed into the car, and as Sarah started the engine, she caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. 42 years old, retired from a career most people would never believe, living a quiet civilian life with her daughter. No longer the operator who'd made the impossible shot from 3,000 meters out. No longer ghost. Just Sarah Chen, mother, veteran, woman who understood that real strength wasn't about the fight you won, it was about the 100 fights you avoided. The discipline you maintained, the control you never surrendered. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Maya turned to her mother with one final question. Do you think those men will remember what you taught them? Sarah considered the question carefully, watching traffic, always aware, always alert, always calculating angles and distances and possibilities. I think they'll never forget it, she finally said. And maybe that makes today worth it. Maybe that's how we make the world a little bit better, one lesson at a time. One moment of discipline, one choice to be stronger than our anger. Maya nodded, satisfied, and turned her attention to the passing scenery. Sarah drove in comfortable silence, one hand on the wheel, her daughter safe beside her, carrying forward the quiet legacy of warriors who understood that real strength was measured not in the enemies you defeated, but in the battles you had the wisdom not to fight at all.